Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Despite numerous problems and threats such as the coronavirus pandemic and the war in Ukraine, Poland has stable public finances, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki told a press conference summarising the current state of the budget. Last year the budget deficit amounted to more than 12 billion zloty, while the deficit of the public finance sector oscillated around 3% of GDP. After the economic crisis caused by the coronavirus pandemic, Poland, like the rest of the world, had to face another one, an energy crisis triggered by Russia's brutal aggression against Ukraine. Despite the fact that we came at the threshold of the second term to face all these disasters, as well as the last year, winter, coal, lack of coal, gas, will there be gas? We have dealt with all these Egyptian plagues. Today, the Prime Minister announced the budget deficit for 2022 amounted to 12.4 billion zloty, although economists had originally expected the deficit to be around 30 billion zloty. This happened, ladies and gentlemen, despite our support programmes, which in 2022 reached, I think, all residents through a VAT reduction on basic foodstuffs. As reported by the Finance Ministry, state budget revenues in January to December 2022 amounted to 505 billion zloty. Receipts turned out to be 2.6% higher than planned in the budget law. In addition, GDP growth was assumed at 1.7%. CIT revenues, this is less talked about and it needs to be emphasised. Here this growth is even greater. More than 190% tax increase from CIT thanks to the effective ceiling of the tax system. According to Eurostat, the unemployment rate in Poland in January this year was 2.8%. This is the second best result in the European Union. Only the Czech Republic has lower unemployment. This also shows how, through this difficult pandemic period and the negative economic effects of the war, the level of unemployment in Poland has not increased and has even decreased. The economic situation in Poland has also been recognised abroad. Currently, President Andrzej Duda is in Qatar, where the United Nations conference is taking place. During the current session, issues of support for the least developed countries are being discussed. Today, we are counted among the rich countries. Here at this conference, it is said that we are members of the European Union, the sixth country of the Union by size. You are an area, a world where there is great prosperity. This is how the Union and Poland are looked at here. Despite this, inflation is affecting the wallets of Poles. It was 17.2% in January, an increase of 2.4% compared to December.
Dochody do budżetu muszą rosnąć.
Budget revenues have to grow strongly because inflation is higher than the average forecast. Revenues have to be much higher than originally planned. The increase in impact is unprecedented. Even if one clears it of the inflation bracket, these inflows are quite significant. In the last 8 years, budget revenues have doubled. The Central Statistical Office's data on the Consumer Price Index for February will be known on March the 15th. According to experts, inflation may have peaked in February. As Finance Minister Magdalena Rzeczkowska said, the inflation rate will begin to fall from this month. Day 376 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. President Zelensky convened a meeting of the Commander-in-Chief's staff today. Assessing the course of the defensive operation, Commander-in-Chief General Valery Zaluzhny and Commander-in-Chief of Ukrainian troops on the Eastern Front, General Alexander Syrsky, decided to continue defensive operations and further strengthen Ukrainian positions in Bakhmut. The loss of Bakhmut is most likely a foregone conclusion. Ukrainian troops will not carry out a massive retreat from Bakhmut, but will withdraw gradually. Although the situation in the city is difficult, the Ukrainians are still fighting. The good news is that the Konstantinovka-Bakhmut road is completely controlled by Ukrainian troops at the moment. All the reports, especially a call by Prigozhin 3 days ago to flee from Bakhmut or to surrender Bakhmut as it was allegedly to be encircled, are fake news. According to the United States Institute for the Study of War, holding Bakhmut makes sense as the Russians are suffering significant losses in this sector despite the Ukrainians being outnumbered. The gradual retreat is a strategy that the Ukrainians successfully employed last year in Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. At that time, Russian forces suffered significant losses in offensive street fighting. If we withdraw from Bakhmut, we will go down in history as the people who are responsible for losing the war. My soldiers often ask, Director, is it possible that the delays in ammunition deliveries are intentional? Were they planned at the Defense Ministry or even higher up to justify to the Russian public the failures at the front? What if they want to frame us and put the responsibility for the failures on us? And that's why they don't give us ammunition, weapons and the ability to recruit prison inmates. The Russian occupation authorities are constantly indoctrinating civilians. According to information provided by Russian media, so far 5 million civilians have been deported to Russia. According to the authorities in Kiev, this is a deliberate effort to break up patriotic foci. The ideology of the so-called Great Russia is also to be instilled in the minds of the youngest. More than 16,000 children have been deported deep into Russia. Russia's point is exactly this. This is a tradition that goes back centuries and is a tradition that is condemnable. Putin is concerned about Russian demographics, and one idea is simply kidnapping or abducting citizens, especially Ukrainian children from various territories. The Sun portal has revealed documents of the Russian security services. They show that President Vladimir Putin, in addition to the rapid seizure of Ukraine, also expected NATO to disintegrate and destabilize the political situation in Europe. Alliance members were expected to yield in the face of nuclear threats. After a year of war, Kiev has modern weapons coming from the West. Meanwhile, the Kremlin still believes in victory and is counting on a military alliance with Belarus. Lukashenko maneuvers because, for one thing, he knows it wouldn't do Belarus any good except for human and image losses. Besides, it would turn out that the entry of the Belarusian army into the military operation in Ukraine is unable to determine the fate of the war. That is, to say the least, a minor incident. In other words, it makes no sense at all for Belarus. According to Deputy Foreign Minister Piotr Wawryk, currently Russia's only weapon is disinformation, so the Kremlin will not give up nuclear blackmail. Vladimir Putin may also wish to destabilize the political situation in Moldova. No one doubts that these protests, which are in Chisinau at the moment, are directly inspired by the Russians, even, as some media report, with the participation of Russian agents, officers, and representatives of the Russian secret services. Their aim is to provoke unrest, to aggravate the internal situation so as to allow this attack to potentially turn into open aggression. Russia's information war has been continuing since 2014, targeting mainly Central and Eastern European countries. As experts note, the Kremlin is seeking to change public sentiment in order to reduce support for aid to Ukraine. Poland is violating European Union regulations on forest protection, according to the European Court of Justice. The state forests disagree with the European Court of Justice's ruling and insist that it is an attempt to cripple forest management. The European Commission took Poland to court at the request of several environmental organisations.
On March 2nd, the European Court of Justice ruled that conservationist organizations should have the right to challenge forest management plans in the courts. According to the state forests, the charge is unfounded and every citizen has the right to submit comments and participate in consultations. A number of such proceedings, cases launched by environmentalists, are taking place before common courts. The European Court of Justice also upheld the European Commission's complaint about the Polish law governing forestry. The court ruled that certain provisions of the Forest Act provide the possibility of violating the Birds and Habitats directives. State Forest spokesman Michał Gzowski recalls that Poland had already complied with the objections a year ago. We acted faster than the tribunal demanded of us on certain legislative matters. The Polish side has already removed Article 14b of the Forest Law. The case was initiated by a complaint to the European Commission by three organizations: Workshop for All Beings, WWF Poland, and the Frank Bolt Foundation. In July 2021, the Commission brought the case against Poland. Solidarity Poland believes that the European Union's actions are aimed at taking away forest management competencies from member states and transferring them to European Union bodies. We will always stand on the side of the forests, and we will not allow this alliance of eco-terrorists with Eurocrats to lead to a decision-making on state forests, moving from under Polish jurisdiction to European jurisdiction. On January 25th, the European Parliament's Environment Committee issued a positive opinion on amending the European Union treaties on common forest management. The European Union action seeks to bring 20 to 30% of the European Community's area under binding restoration and environmental protection plans. Forest management is, after all, a broader picture. It is not only Polish state forests, but all of Europe's forests, which should be overseen by the European Union in a clear and transparent way. way, and I have no problem with that. The United Right disagrees with this approach. Law and Justice MEP Zbigniew Kuźmiuk said that the European Union ban on logging in the Białowieża forest has led to the degradation of a significant area of the forest. This is already about 12 million cubic meters. That's how many more trees have been destroyed by the print bark beetle and are not being allowed to be removed, so more trees are being attacked. Poland's forest resources occupy almost a third of the country's area. Since 2005, 260,000 hectares of forests have been added. Poland's timber sector generates about 3% gross domestic product, providing jobs for 500,000 people.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.